Now, CEI is not a healthcare organization. We don't play one on television. But as I mentioned, we have 30 years of experience on the impact of economic regulation. And that's why, for us, we actually challenge this law. Because for us specifically, federal subsidies given to states which have chosen not to establish their own healthcare exchange is, to us, nothing more than an illegal attempt by the IRS to write something that Congress passed. We care a great deal about not allowing a precedent that would give federal agencies the authority to ignore laws enacted by Congress. That's enough for us, and that's fundamentally why we created and have been involved in these cases since the beginning.
Now, Congress wanted every state to set up an exchange so that it could show we're not on the road to single payer. But it could not command the states to do that, because that's what's called commandeering, and that's unconstitutional. So instead, it did what it's done often in the past. It decided to bribe the states, which is a totally legitimate technique. Basically, if the states do what we'd like them to do, they get all this money. If they don't do what we'd like them to do, they don't get the money. And the way they bribed them was basically to say, if you, a state, set up your own exchange, you get these subsidies. Your citizens will be grateful for that. But if you do not set up an exchange, and you have that choice, then HHS will set one up for you, and that's a federal exchange, but it said nothing about subsidies going to federal exchanges. It only talked about subsidies going to the state exchanges.
This is Jonathan Gruber saying, if you are a state and you don't set up an exchange, that means your citizens don't get their tax credits. You can see why the other side is apoplectic over that, right? Because he's basically said, this issue is really already decided that that was what they were doing.
There are victims not of a ruling against Obamacare, there are victims of Obamacare. Those victims include people whose insurance premiums have skyrocketed. They include people who can't hang on to their doctors despite White House promises to the contrary. They include people who have been pushed out of full-time work into part-time status or unemployed status because their companies need to find ways to avoid complying with Obamacare. I think any regulation that has the incentive of pushing people out of full-time work into part-time work is on its face absolutely insane.
You know, a plaintiff victory does not cause a disaster, does not cause a debacle. We have the disaster, we have the debacle. Obamacare is the disaster. This provides relief from it for millions of people who are being unlawfully subjected to Obamacare by the illegal IRS rule that overruled their state's statutory right to opt out. And that is what we need to focus on.
The IRS regulation we see as, on the one hand, an attempt to undercut the choice that Congress gave to the states, but more importantly, and this gets into an issue that really goes beyond Obamacare, it's an attempt to undercut the very separation of powers enshrined in the Constitution. Namely, under that document, it is Congress that makes laws, Congress that enacts statutes, and it's agencies that carry out those statutes, that implement them.
The aftermath should not be about finding another way to hand out money slightly differently without remembering what relief we're trying to seek from this law. You can't get everything, but you can get quite a lot.
But we want to make that insurance a lot more affordable by eliminating the mandates, the ones that Tom talked about, the employer mandate, the individual mandate, but also the benefit mandates, all the regulatory requirements that are making this insurance so expensive. Put it back to the states. If they want to reimpose them, fine, but now their citizens understand the cost.
So it'll come down to, March 4th is the beginning with the oral argument. It'll probably be late June, but probably around that time we'll be finding out that the plane you thought you could keep, maybe you can find it again.